How can leaders balance their vulnerability with them also having authority in the workplace?
To make sure you humanize yourself, the more positional power you have.
Your communication creates your legacy. What do you mean by that?
When the day comes for us to depart this earth and our loved ones and colleagues gather to remember us, they are going to be talking about how we listened, how we spoke, and how we wrote. Hiding from risk is a fear that others will be able to detect are real or supposed weaknesses.
But how can leaders determine which communication risks are worth taking and which ones we should just I'm not touching that? Michelle, it is such a pleasure to have you on Transform Your Workplace. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Brandon. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I feel like you and I are both out to do the same thing, which is improve culture and insight learning in organizations and individuals. So, of course, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I mean, you were just talking to me earlier about you just like to give away information, add value to people. And I appreciate you coming on because I know we're going to do exactly that. On this episode, your book is awesome. We're going to talk about that. It's called Communicate with Courage, Taking Risks to Overcome the 4 Hidden Challenges. We'll talk about those 4 hidden challenges, but let's first talk about the book. You describe it as a bravery manual. Why do you think bravery is such an essential element of effective communication?
Well, if we don't summon our courage, then we sit back when there is something or someone that we want to defend, or try to improve a situation that we might be able to make a difference in. And if we're afraid, then we don't let our unique individual lights shine and we don't speak for what we believe in. And I don't like that feeling of regret at the end of the day when you put your head on the pillow and think back as to how your communication went with different humans throughout the day. I like to feel like I've done the best I can with my 50% of that deal, knowing that I can't control the other person's words, reactions, the way they deliver feedback, their tone, but I can certainly control mine. And if I'm brave, I can make a difference in the world.
I was thinking in the work that you've done, both with organizations, individuals, I imagine when you set out to write this book, it was for a specific person in mind with this, probably who needed some bravery and some of their communication. Who did you have in mind?
It's actually a pretty wide range of individuals I had in mind. The person is feeling itchy. They sense that there's more happiness and success available to them in life and relationships, and they're looking for someone to give them some advice. And because I can't be everyone's coach, I thought a book might help me get some ideas out that I've seen help thousands of people in the last 25 years. But the age range, I'd say, I've seen it given to 17 and 18-year-olds. I've worked with high school students in entrepreneurship and business classes who've read the book. And then I heard from someone that their grandmother, who's 88, loved it and wished she would have had it sooner. So that was nice. So I'd say young adult to senior adult, but the commonality is a thirst for personal or professional growth.
I think this book is right for the Gen Zers. I think they're trying to find their voice. I've seen many come into the workplace and often probably don't have that bravery muscle quite yet. I mean, are you seeing that too with that generation?
Of course, unless we're lucky enough to have some role models and some people who invest in us at our youngest ages, it can be very tough to pull off confidence in the adult career-based world.
The book explores 4 hidden challenges. How did you come up with those 4? And maybe just give a brief overview of them. We're going to get into them a little later, but let's talk about those 4.
The 4 hidden challenges are hiding from risk, defining to be right, settling for good enough, and rationalizing the negative. And I came up with them because when I sent the book as a completed manuscript, 10 short chapters, 140 pages, to the publisher I most wanted to work with, they called me back and said, "We think it's really good and we want this book. However, we want you to rewrite it." Bummer, right? It's really good, but rewrite it.
The last thing you want to hear.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what I did. And they wanted it rewritten to illuminate more clearly what might be in folks' peripheral vision, that if we could bring it forward, they could identify, aha, like out of the 4, that one has been tripping me up in my relationships. And that stops now. I'm going to start those baby steps, the pro moves, as I call them, the little actions, activities, ways to listen or send a message that the average bear doesn't think about or know about. So I came up with the 4 hidden challenges with good feedback from excellent editors that asked me to make it a little more clear what I was trying to explain.
Yeah. That's probably great because even beyond the book, you can have this framework for how you work with people, and even like if you wanted to structure a keynote around that framework, you could do it as well. So good on them to share that feedback.
Good point. And the keynotes have been going well, and I just had my largest audience out in Denver. It was the Grant Professionals Association Grant Summit, 1,500 people.
Wow.
And that's exactly what we did. We talked about the 4 hidden challenges and which one we'd like to choose because, as with my team and we've noticed we fall into all 4 sometimes. So what I'm advising people to do is choose one, work on that for maybe 6 months to a year, watch how that turns your life and your head around in a positive way, and then maybe move on to another if you have another to work with. All the while, self-love, grace, acceptance, understanding that a lot of our dysfunctions as communicators are coming from outside forces and people who meant to do well by us but didn't do as well as they could have, perhaps. So a lot of self-love and keeping in mind baby steps are the way to get great as a communicator.
In chapter 1, you talk about vulnerability, and it's about saying nobody's perfect and actually meaning it. How can leaders balance their vulnerability with them also having authority in the workplace? I know leaders struggle with that. I actually don't. I'm pretty vulnerable as a leader and a person. I always have been. But I know people struggle with this. So what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I trust you. And that was the sense I got from you when we first started talking. That's the sense I get from the way that you interview. You earn people's trust because, Brandon, you are willing to sort of let us see a little more than you have to let us see. So I would say, wow, thinking about how much you want to let others see, it's really an art and a science, and it will depend on the audience or the person you're dealing with.
Right.
But it's a good idea to make sure you humanize yourself the more positional power you have, because you've already got that sort of advantage as a communicator. Then let us see some of the slings and arrows. Your hopes, your dreams, your disappointments, and your worries are all great things to share in a reasonable measure so that the receiver of your sharing isn't burdened with emotions that then they have to deal with. So we want people to understand that you go through it too, that we all go through difficult times in life, and then use an appropriate measure of vulnerability in that you're not adding a burden to their life.
I love what you said about that, because I think even especially during COVID, a lot of people around me, a lot of HR consultants who were helping a lot of business leaders through COVID. And it was just a time like nobody knew what the heck was going on. And I remember them having a lot of compassion fatigue. And I think there was probably this spectrum of like vulnerability and just feeling so emotional and then having the other person have to bear that weight. Is that really what you're talking about with just there's probably a balance of how much we're sharing and how emotional we get as a leader?
Exactly. And we've worked with mental health counselors, social workers, nurses, police, firefighters, 911 call takers, and we've taught stress and change management to those groups and leadership skills to those groups. And that's what I end up learning about them is burnout is ever present in those fields and many fields because you are having to use your emotional intelligence and try to put yourself in the other person's shoes and ideally feel what they're feeling if you really want to connect. So we all have to be able to disconnect sometimes from what we do for work and from our family obligations and remember that we are neither our careers nor our roles in our homes and with our families, and allow ourselves some joy and some time to reset. So one of my favorite executive coaching goals to assign, I write 5 to 8 item action plans for all my executive coaching clients, and we meet once a month for 1 to 2 hours. And then I write the goal plan, they bless it, or they ask for changes, and off they go to do those things that will help them feel more fulfilled and be better leaders and communicators. One of my favorite goals is to ask people to create a self-care menu or a stress management menu, whatever you want to call that. And I ask them to list on one page anything they can think of that restores them body, mind, or soul. And it could be something that's 2 minutes, or it could be 2 hours. It could cost $20. It could cost nothing. It could cost $200. It might be alone. It might be something you do with others. It might be something you used to do that filled you up that you don't think you have time for anymore. And I challenge them to find, 20 minutes a day, let's say, half an
I'm
hour
going to
a
totally
day
do that.
to invest in themselves with no one and nothing else making demands on their time. And in that way, they're able to go back to their families and teams and be a solid strength, a foundation, a source of leadership, and they're able to share some vulnerability without it knocking them off center. I mean, it's a tough world. It's a tough life, and communication is a tough skill to gain we never graduate from the study of communication.
No.
So to your last breath, the last thing we say, and I know in my mind, the last thing I say, I will probably exit this world thinking, oh, I don't like my tone there. So it's kind of funny. We call these seminars that we develop, excelling as a leader, mastering interpersonal communication. I just hope people know that after 1/2 day or 2 hours,
not going to master it.
They are not necessarily masters, right? But we're taking baby steps to become more masterful. And another tip for our listeners today and our viewers, when you choose your communication goal, and I hope that you will pick up my book and pick up one of the suggestions, pick any suggestion, but be sure that you advertise it to the humans around you, because we've all got you figured out. So Brandon, if you're going to be more assertive and share how you feel more openly, or you're going to be less assertive and work on being a better listener who makes eye contact and fully registers what the other person is saying, whatever your goal is, tell the people around you, because we've already got you all figured out and filed away. And you may never sort of get credit or be seen differently if you're not vulnerable enough to share that you have a goal.
I love that. What is the feedback challenge, and how do you recommend leaders who have cultures where feedback is a little risky for them?
It's a way to take control of getting constructive feedback and praise, controlling it for yourself, whether your employer does anything like a 360 sort of analysis of how you're performing or not. This allows you to, in a quick and effective way, learn how others see you. So I designed it for the 122nd Air Force Fighter Wing here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, years ago, because when I was teaching leadership on base, I asked some of their senior commanders, what did people who work for you wish you would do differently? And that was one of the few questions that made them uncomfortable, because they did not know. They could not answer. So kind of standing up in front of all of them in that hangar, I sort of came up with, I know what our assignment is for next week's class. Our assignment is to go ask a good handful of people, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen if you're brave enough. Ask them this question. What's something you like about working with me? Or what's something you like about my communication? And in your opinion, what's something that I could sometimes do better? And you hand that, you can actually print it from our website, and now it's e-fillable. It's at gladieuxconsulting.com. And you download, save, and you can send it to someone and say, I'm taking this training challenge on. And then you give them about a week to respond, and you're not looking for a book. The space to respond is controlled, and it's about 3 or 4 lines, right? And they can type or call you or email you or ask for a face-to-face, but ideally they give you a piece of praise, a piece of constructive criticism. And then if you're running your own feedback challenge, your script is to say, thank you very much, Brandon. I'll think about this. And then get the heck out of there before you're tempted to say, well, this isn't exactly true. No.
Yeah,
Don't mess up the experiment. Get the data. Don't confound the variables within this experiment. Just get the data. And after you've received data from a good handful of people, what generally happens is we start to see patterns, no matter what level. And with me, I'll do this with a client in Idaho, in California, and in Chicago, and in Georgia. I'll just pick different clients from different areas that don't know each other and send out the feedback challenge. And it's been amazing to me how the praise and the constructive criticism tends to line up, which makes me think there is some validity in the feedback that I'm getting. And it helps me know what to consider to continue and what to consider to stop or start in a different way. It's for the brave. Obviously it's for people who are willing to take a look at themselves and how others see them at any point in life.
Feedback's a gift, isn't it? It's at the individual level, maybe it's maybe not true. And that's probably where like emotions could come into play. Like we get an individual piece of feedback and it's like, that is not me. But to your point, like if you get a good sampling of a lot of feedback and you start to see some patterns, maybe some of it's true, maybe it's not, but you start to get some clarity probably based on other people's opinions.
Yes, and thank you for asking. One of the constructive criticisms that I received from various people in various walks of life in different diverse organizations was that I struggle with listening when I disagree, because I'm pretty passionate about my beliefs. And I thought, have I heard that before? Oh, yeah. Like every personal relationship I've been in where there was an argument, I called out for that. And it made me first get nervous, as with, I think, anybody, no matter who you are, there's a little bit of, am I a bad person? If that's true. And once I was able to put that to bed, no, I am a person, which means perfection's not possible. And so everyone has weaknesses to work on. Do I wish to choose this as one of my things to work on as a communicator? And I think I'll be, again, working on this till the day I die, because it's personality based. Personality comes from about probably a good portion DNA that we can't change. That's genetics, and also from life experiences, which are all in my rearview mirror. I also can't change those, but it's created the person that I am today. And at least she is a person who is willing to look at herself, even though constructive criticism, I admit, sometimes hurts. And it's never helped me when people say, oh, it's it's work, it's business, it's just business. Well, not to me. Not if you put your heart and soul into your work, it's not just work. However, I am strong, I am brave. I check my self-talk, and I remember I do want to ask people what they see. Otherwise, how will I know? Because I'm in here looking out at you. You are a much better judge of how I perform today as a podcast guest than I ever could be. I can have a sense of it, but the brave part of me needs to ask you, what could I have done better? Would you consider having me on a second time? If so, what would you like me to do differently? And then there's the beautiful times that people write back and say, nothing, I can't think of anything, I promise, right? And I always say, okay, but if you do, or when you do, let me know. And sometimes I have people come back a year later going, I just noticed that thing you do that bugs me. Now I know. And I think, okay, wow, there's no statute of limitations on giving feedback if you make people aware that you're always open. What a brave thing to do.
Yeah. One line that really popped out to me was, you said, your communication creates your legacy. What do you mean by that?
I mean that when the day comes for us to depart this earth and our loved ones and colleagues gather to remember us, they are going to be talking about how we listened, how we spoke, and how we wrote. And so while we're here, I think we should take advantage of as many decisions per day about communication that we can to try to do our best with those, especially communication decisions that align with our values. So we're creating our legacy daily. I was just coaching a business founder yesterday, and they were kind of looking back on negative comments they heard from employees that hurt their feelings. And I commented that I'd seen a lot of change in the past year in this person, and that just texted them last night. Interestingly, think about your legacy and remember that tomorrow's a new day, and every day you build it. So we're never static. We're always either evolving or devolving as communicators. Let's just try to get a leg up and be courageous and use some pro moves and take baby steps daily towards what we want people to be saying about us when we're on, to the great gig in the sky.
Let's get into the hidden challenges we talked about when we opened up the podcast. There's 4 of them. Let's start with hiding from risk. What is this whole idea about?
Hiding from risk is a fear that others will be able to detect our real or supposed weaknesses. And sometimes we have weaknesses assigned to ourselves and they're not even true, or they were true when we were 20 and now we're 50. So we could kick some of these things to the curb, but it's a fear of exposing ourselves. And I think about something that you said in a previous podcast. You were telling the story about a fall weekend that you were on the Portland Spirit boat.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was
memory.
And there was an employee awards ceremony. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try to think of her name. Angela, your EVP. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And she, you said, was a longtime coworker and a friend also. And you guys had planned a secret toast, which I love and totally want to hear more about offline. And you said to yourself, I've got to say something. She's been amazing. I don't care how I feel about public speaking. I'm saying something. That was an example of you overcoming the challenge of hiding from risk. So, I just want to applaud you. I bet it meant a lot to Angela. How did it go when you did that?
I don't know. I felt like I blacked out or something. I don't love public speaking. It's funny. Like it's so easy for me to sit behind a podcast mic. I actually had to do a talk yesterday to our internal team. We have a group of like 40 HR consultants, and I did a whole talk on AI and machine learning to them because, everybody has a different level of understanding on it. Oh, I'm so nervous for that. And I just don't love being exposed like that where, it's in person. They can see me and body language is everything. But I got through it great. And then I told them at the very end, I'm like, I was so nervous for this. And like, no, you were amazing. And it is funny when you put yourself out there like that people tend to connect with you a little bit better.
I have 2 tips for you there. And then I will tell you about the other 3 hidden challenges, but not too much because I want people to go read about them too. Number 1, try not to tell anyone you're nervous. It's really hard. It feels good. It feels good to confess it. It's like, but it feels good to confess it because then we're nervous too. If we're in your audience, those of us who are empathic are like, okay, he's nervous, I'm nervous. But maybe you did this after the speech.
I did it after the whole thing. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Great. And it wasn't on the mic. You didn't say, I was nervous about this. Okay, cool. But people tend to do that. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm so nervous. I will call my team members and just leave them a voicemail. I'm about to walk on stage. I'm super nervous. I'll do my best. One wonderful team member, Tim, our project manager, called me back, and I still have the voicemail because he said, got your voicemail, Michelle. I think it's going to go great because you're going to go do what you do. Do what you do. And I thought, that's right. That's all I can do is do what I do. That's all I can do is my best at this point. Okay. And then my second tip would be to remember that everyone in your audience is likely rooting for you. And if they're not, wow, that's on them. But we all want to spend a good 10 minutes hearing you speak at the meeting, or a full day if you're teaching a full day event, or 1 hour if you've got an hour to present. Even if it's just a short toast that you're doing, we all hope for your success. And one more little thing, no one is more or less valuable than you. And if you can remember at the soul level, we're all created equal, at least that's what I believe, then I don't have to worry about trying to sound more knowledgeable or important than I am, nor do I have to worry that there's somebody listening that is more important than me at the most human level. And those things help me get on the mic and, especially if it's a challenging audience, maybe it's a mandatory training in harassment and bias prevention. And the organization has been ordered to do the training. And I'm walking in and people are like, clearly not happy to be there.
Don't want to be here. Yeah.
I will find a way to present the value. And that might be, perhaps you don't need to know anything about workplace laws. You might be very respectful and you might not feel this training applies to you. But if you have a family member come home sometime and say, you're not going to believe what's going on at work. I don't know what to do about this person and what they're saying or doing to me. You're going to have this knowledge and you're going to teach from it. And I noticed that people are sort of like, oh, I have a husband. I have a sister. I have a significant other. I do want to know this. So we're also always looking for ways that we're going to be of service, and we're going to name it up front so people have a reason to listen. You asked about the hidden challenges. The others, very briefly, are defining to be right. And that's the person who's so damn sure that you can't tell them anything. And that's all of us sometimes. And that's putting too much stock into our assumptions when others have had different life experiences that we could learn from. Rationalizing the negative is a pessimistic mindset. And I spend a little time in chapter 1 trying to illuminate for the reader or the audiobook listener that it's important to choose either optimism or pessimism as we move through life as communicators, because it's going to color the rest of our life starting today. And I think sometimes we've been raised in pessimistic environments and had role models who were pessimistic, and it was almost taught. And there's also a personality element to it, but it's never too late to make a decision, make the courageous decision to put some time and faith into possible positive outcomes. I don't know how you'll pull off courageous strategic communication without imagining things going well. And so, now for easily over 1,000 original communication seminars that I've designed and presented all over the US and a couple other countries, I always take a little time to visualize we're laughing together, we're learning together. And I picture those people taking notes because they want to write down a very specific goal about how they might improve the way they send or receive messages. And we usually hit those main things but I'll sit on the plane or in the rental car outside the venue and I'm imagining that happening. And you know what? I think honestly, I can say 1,000 for 1,000 on that one. I don't know if it would be possible without the visualization. So that's about rationalizing.
That one, like for me, like that one stems back to like childhood. I was a lot into team sports, and I was pretty successful. I played 3 different sports in high school, and visualization was huge. Like seeing it going well, and seeing me, I was a pitcher in baseball, and seeing me commanding the mound and just being successful, and that translates to business too. Like, even the talk that I did yesterday, it's like visualizing the engagement, like you said, the note taking, the eyeballs like staring at you, like those things are going to make it go so much better than if you were thinking the negative side.
What were you presenting about yesterday? Oh, that's right. You mentioned that. Okay. How long was the presentation?
Just an hour.
Just an hour.
I had to pack a lot of information in 1 hour.
Some of our listeners are thinking, an hour, no way. But you've worked up to it. You started at 5 minutes somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's very possible. Everyone has the ability to become a great public speaker. I always liken it to swimming or skiing. Mm-hmm. Pick your thing where the environment is different. And whenever I'm swimming, I'm still me, but I'm in a different environment that I've had to acclimate to. And it's a lot like that when you decide to speak up at a meeting. You're going to get more used to and comfortable with your own voice, but not without trying. None of us can do that for our friends and family. We have to do that for ourselves. So the 4th hidden challenge that readers will find in the book is settling for good enough. And that is stopping at sort of like C+ instead of reaching for B or B+ when it matters to you. So I admit there are some things I give C+ effort to because I would burn out if I was aiming for A+ all the time. But when it comes to things like using my voice to stick up for someone who's not in the room, who isn't being treated fairly without being present, I'm saying something. If I run into, overt discrimination that's going to impact somebody's career potentially, I'm going to say something. If I lose the client, so be it. I hope not. I hope they're open to respectful disagreement. If it's done diplomatically, it can often go well, but you do need to have the courage to take a look at what your values are so you know when to avoid settling for good enough. And there's a great exercise on our website called the Unique Mission Exercise. It's the first tab under free tools. So you click free tools and down falls a few dozen 1 to 2 page self-directed e-learning tools. And that one is just, I think it's maybe 4 questions like, what's your name? What do you love doing in your work or volunteer life? For whom and what do they need? And then how might they change as a result of knowing you doing the work that you do? And once you answer those questions, I've seen a lot of people like print and frame this colorful, unique mission exercise because it keeps you going when you're scared. It keeps you going when you don't feel good. It keeps you going when you're tired, and it helps you see when it's time for you to speak up and not settle for good enough.
I love that you have exercises not only on your website, but throughout the book you have exercises and the pro tip or the pro moves is what you call them, and a lot of good stuff in there. A couple more things. I know we got to go soon, but this one I have to ask you. In a chapter called Risks Not Worth Taking, we kind of highlight like not all risks are smart risks. And I think like we want to take smart risks in life, and that's what helps us grow. But how can leaders determine which communication risks are worth taking and which ones we should just like, I'm not touching that?
How to determine what risks are worth taking? Yeah. Well, we do want to take a calculated risk. So we're going to look at the pros and cons, but we definitely want to adopt an optimistic mindset if we can visualize. So here's one test. Can you visualize it impacting the individual, the team, or the organization, or the customers/clients? If you can visualize you making a move as a communicator, being helpful to any of those groups, then when you say something, right, or give your opinion or offer that constructive feedback or advocate for something, you can say, because I think this could reap dividends down the road in this way. So you're not just saying, I want this to be better for me. You're saying, I want this to be better for you, for us, for our organization, for our customers. And it usually flows a lot better than when you're advocating for something you believe in. So take a risk when you can identify how it might benefit the team, the customers, the individuals, or the organization.
You talk about the power of clarity in difficult conversations. I know a lot of people listening probably hate having difficult conversations, but do you have any tips for people who might be entering and preparing for a difficult conversation?
Tons. Yes.
Give us your favorites.
And I squeeze them into 140 pages.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Remember that you're the difficult person sometimes too.
No, that can't be right.
Remember, and hey, if you approach me to say, Michelle, well, I didn't like that you did this, if you could just add, and I do it too sometimes, my ego is relieved. And that allows me to accept what I might need to see about myself. So another tip would be get your recipe going as you're stirring in ingredients into how you're going to be as a communicator, what you choose to be. 2 main ingredients. Number 1, diplomacy, so that you care about how others receive what you're saying or writing. And the second would be assertiveness, so that you say the hard thing and you say it in a straightforward way with kindness and empathy for how it will be received. So those are 2 tips I think might be helpful for difficult conversations. And interestingly, I have an interview tomorrow on the local news station. And the topic they've given me is how to deal with difficult family members and friends at holiday occasions. You know, where we have sugar and drinking and all kinds of triggers from the past. And so,
considering post-election too, I mean, I'm sure tensions are pretty high between family members. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. So good luck with that interview.
I'm not going to tell you I'm nervous about that because I don't believe in telling people that. I'll say I'm excited about the challenge.
Yeah.
If you would like to text or email any tips to me that you think I should share with the TV audience tomorrow, I am all ears.
2 quick little things and I'll let you go. You have, I think at the end of each chapter, you have pro moves. What's one pro move throughout the book that you want to leave with people today that would help transform the way they communicate at work?
Watch your self-talk. You are going to speak to yourself more than you speak to any other human. Even if you're married to your best friend for 75 years, you still have more conversations with yourself. So why don't you begin when you're driving, when you're falling asleep, when you're waking up? Why don't you begin to just notice from a detached observer standpoint what you're saying to yourself? And a lot of those messages are about how others are, see you, move in the world, move through the world. And just be willing to try a second voice sometimes that might debate the first voice that you hear, because we can't rely always on our self-talk to be accurate or kind. And remember, it's a game of baby steps to get great as a communicator and share your goals with others. So I just gave you 3, but
that's awesome. I love that. It's a great one. As we wrap up, what's one parting thought about your book, Communicate with Courage, that you hope would stay with every single person that's either listening or would actually pick up the book and read the whole thing?
That today is the day that you start to build or rebuild your legacy. And that if you are humble and brave, you can change relationships that are difficult, and you can improve your work-life communication as well. And you will love the feeling and the gifts that come from deciding to work on your communication skills. And those gifts, you and I cannot know, so we cannot guarantee what they will be. But I've been doing this for long enough and walked the road with thousands of people as they chose communication goals and then they're reporting back. It's amazing. I didn't think this would ever get any better. And wow, has it, because they've changed themselves, and that changes the outside world.
My guest today has been Michelle Gladieux, the author of Communicate with Courage, Taking Risks to Overcome the 4 Hidden Challenges. Michelle, we'll put links to all of your social media profiles, your website in the show notes. So I hope people will connect with you and, of course, buy the book. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for 500 plus podcasts that you have facilitated. What a gift to the world. I hope that you are very proud, because you deserve to be.
Thank you so much.